Hi, welcome to Sewing with Sandy. Today we're going to do a sew along on Simplicity 9702. Cute boho dress, lots of gathers, lots and lots and lots of gathers. 3 gathered tiers on the bottom, and then the gathered cuffs on these little billowy sleeves and the gathered sleeves, lots and lots of gathers. But we're going to do some great and interesting techniques on this dress. We're going to replace the facing with a full lining on the bodice. So that's very easy to do, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Facings have their place. I'm not a big fan, you all know that, but this is so much nicer. It's not going to roll out. I don't have to top stitch it, and this cotton lawn is super sheer. So the bodice is fully lined. I can put a little half slip with it now, and it's absolutely perfect. So billowy sleeves, lined bodice, 3 tiers of gathering. So we're going to explore gathering yet again, and it seems to be everywhere for spring and summer. All of these floaty fluid dresses with this super soft fabric, lightweight fabric. So this is perfect. We're doing the absolute long version, and then because this is cut very very low, we're going to put a little modesty panel in here. I just put a little piece of lace in, and we'll show you how to do that. And we're going to gather the sleeves. So we're going to put a little sleeve band on here and gather the sleeves so we have this really soft, floaty boho look. So no zippers, no buttons, no collar, no facings, little tiny baby hems, and banded off sleeves. It is a lot of fabric, but it goes up surprisingly fast considering the amount of fabric. Now, one of the things you want to take care is to make sure that you get something that's super light and drapey, right? This would be great in a silk. This is a cotton lawn. I think it's from Mood. I'm not 100%. It's been in my stash for quite a while now, and I actually didn't have quite enough. I had to make one tier a little bit smaller, but nonetheless, it looks great. This super overall print, and it's very, very fun and very vibrant. So let's get sewing. All right, we're going to get started sewing this beautiful little boho dress together, and I have this really lovely lightweight cotton lawn. So it's super lightweight, right? There's no body to that at all. So instead of putting facings in, which I really don't like, I wanted to give the top, at least the bodice piece, some substance. That's hard to say. Some substance. So the first thing we're going to do is line the top. So we're going to skip the first couple of instructions on the pattern. Now you can certainly go ahead and put the interfacing in, and that's pretty classic. You know, you add a stiffener to your facing, add an interfacing to your facing, and then add your facing all around the neck edge of the top, which would be, you know, this edge here. So here is my front pieces, and here is my back neck, and you would sew these together, the shoulder seam, and then add that facing piece in. We're going to skip that part because we're going to fully line this. So what I've done is I've sewn my front together at the shoulder seams and at the side seams. All right, so I have this little bodice, and then I have also done the same thing with a lining. I have copied the exact top, and I have sewn it together at the side seams and the shoulder seams. And now we're going to sew this together around the neck edge. So I want to turn my top inside, right side out. So I have the right sides here facing you. And then I have my lining, and I'm going to apply that to the right sides together of the garment. I'm going to start at the shoulder seams, and I'm going to butt the seam allowances, one to the left and one to the right, so they line up perfectly. If you press your seams open, then that's fine, then you don't have to do that, but since I serged mine, I press them closed. And then I'm going to pin the lower edge, pin this together. So since we cut them together, they should fit beautifully with no problem. Bring these edges together, go around the neck edge. So I'm going to do the other shoulder, same deal. butt the seams one way and the other, and you can feel them slide together. But you want a good connection there. And then this lower edge down here, pin that together. So this is right sides together, the front neck edge. So this front piece is open because we have this V here, and the pieces are actually going to wrap around and come together. So that's why we can get away with doing this without too much trouble and without having to hand sew the shoulder seams together, which is always a good thing. So I'm going to take this to the machine and stitch all the way up this one side of the front, around the back of the neck, and all the way down the other side, and then we're going to understitch it. So I'll show you how to do that when we come back. All right, I sewed my lining to my bodice top and went ahead and serged them together. So this is pretty simple. And then what we want to do is we want to press it. At this point I haven't done much more than press it. You want to clip little notches into the curved edge of the neckline. So you want to go to that stitch but not through. And then what we're going to do is we're going to understitch. So I have pressed it flat, and then I've pressed the seam allowance towards the lining. And from the right side of the garment, I'm going to take it to my machine, and I'm going to stitch the seam allowance to my lining right along here. And when I do that, it's going to give me this perfect edge, which is what I'm looking for right here along the front. And then my bodice is completely lined and no need for facings and nothing popping out. So I'm going to go take that and understitch that all the way around the lining and the seam allowances together. You're not going to see it on the fashion fabric, which makes it look more high-end because you don't have top stitching on there. Top stitching has to be like spot on to make it look gorgeous and not homemade. So this is a way to avoid that. You get a much better construction on your garment. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to come back and get it all ready to put the sleeves in. Okay, here is our top, right? Looks fabulous. What I have done is understitched this neckline. You can see this is little teeny tiny rows of stitching there. And that just helps me turn it and get a beautiful press on that. So look at the front of this, it's gorgeous. No facings popping out, and everything is lined. Now this sheer fabric has some body. And then what I did is I just attached the armholes and the bottoms together. So when I go to sew this now, it's like one unit. So it's not flopping around, it's all one whole entire unit. So this is ready to go for the next step, which is going to be to insert the sleeves. Before I do that though, you want to try it on, and this is set to just cross right here in the front, and you can tack that together. That's pretty low. Depending on how you feel about that, you can add a piece of fabric in between here for a little bit of modesty, but you can tack these two pieces together. And so that's the very last thing we need to do for our top, and then our top is all ready to go. So we can set that aside. And the next thing we want to work on is the sleeves. Now, we're making version C of the dress, which is this multi-tiered dress, but we're putting version A sleeves on. So we have these little bubble sleeves instead of these short puffy sleeves. We have these long bubble sleeves. So we're going to work on those. And here is our sleeve tissue. We're using piece 5 for this one. And there's a couple of important things you want to remember when you're working with a sleeve, an inset sleeve. This mark at the top here, this circle, is what matches up with the shoulder seam. So you want to make sure that you mark that. And then you also want to make sure you mark these notches on either side. I use a pin. You could use chalk. Try not to cut into the fabric, but it's really important, if nothing else, to mark this double notch, because that tells you that that is the back of the sleeve. So we want to make sure that we have the left sleeve on the left side and the right sleeve on the right side, and the best way to do that is to know which part of the sleeve goes to the back. All right, so that's my little spiel on sleeves. The first thing we're going to do with our sleeve is we're going to there's a lot of gathering in this dress. We're going to gather the top edge. This is a pretty high cap. This is my sleeve. Right, and this is the cap, and we're going to gather from notch to notch. We're going to run a basting stitch inside the seam allowance and then outside the seam allowance. So in this case, it's a 5/8 inch seam allowance. We're going to run that basting thread somewhere around 3/8 and 7/8. So when we stitch it, we can stitch in between, and then we'll just pull this basting thread out. And you want to leave long tails on your basting thread so you can gather them as you put this sleeve into the armhole. The sleeve is bigger, so we need to gather it. So that's the first step for the sleeve. Then after we've stitched in those basting stitches, we're going to turn the sleeve right sides together and stitch it closed. So now we have the sleeve, and then the very next thing we're going to do is we're going to add 2 rows of gathering at the base of the sleeve. And then that part of the sleeve, we're going to set that aside, and we're going to make the cuff to put the elastic casing in. So piece 6 is our cuff piece. So it's just a straight little piece, and we're going to sew them together so they make a little loop, right? Try not to twist them. We're going to sew them together and make a little loop, and then we're going to turn under the unnotched edge 3/8 of an inch and press it all the way around. So we're going to have 2 of those, 1 for each sleeve. So now we're ready to assemble our sleeve. I have to go get these 2 sleeves up to snuff and gather them and make sure that they're ready to go, and then we will assemble the sleeve, and then the top will be completely finished, and we just have to add the gatherings down on the skirt. So this is going together pretty quickly. All right, we are back with all of our sleeve pieces. So I have basted here, leaving the seam allowance open. So I basted 3/8 of an inch and 7/8 of an inch around the cap of my sleeve, and then I sewed the sleeve together. Then I basted around the bottom of the sleeve. There's tons of gathering in this pattern. So I basted within the seam allowance and then outside of the seam allowance on my sleeve. So the next thing we're going to do is insert this casing. Now, the banding that goes on the bottom of the sleeve, and I actually thought there was elastic in here, and I was surprised to find out that there wasn't. So that's interesting. So we've stitched our banding into a circle, right, and pressed up 3/8 of an inch on the unnotched edge. And now we want to have this. So I'm going to take it at the seam allowance, and at the other end I'm going to put a pin. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my sleeve. This is the base of the sleeve down here. I'm going to fold it on the seam allowance and find the halfway mark on my sleeve. And what I want to do is I want to gather this so it fits on this. So I'm going to match up the seam allowances, and I'm going to lay these right sides together, and I have to gather all of that sleeve into this little circle. So I'm going to pin the seam allowances with one seam allowance going to the back and then the banding seam allowance going to the front, and then that way they'll butt up against each other. And that's where all my basting threads, my long basting threads are. And then I'm going to go to the other side where I pinned the center of the sleeve and the center of the banding and match them up. So now when I do my gathering, it will be balanced to the front and the back. I won't have more on one side. So now I have to go inside my sleeve and find the 2 basting threads on one side. All right, so now I have the 2 threads on one side of my sleeve, the 2 basting threads, and I'm just going to pull on them and move my fingers slightly to gather up this base of the sleeve until it's the same size as the banding. And then I'm going to pin this side, making sure that I balance out all of this gathering. And then I bring, the gathering ruffles the fabric a little bit, so you have to take care that you're bringing the raw edges of the sleeve and the banding together, and you're not getting folds and crinkles as you do this. So now you can see why we only do half at a time, because if you had the whole thing, you could very easily end up with all the gathering in one place, and then it wouldn't look balanced and even. And I'm kind of spreading this out as I'm pinning it so that it's even. So I've pinned this side and the sleeve is all gathered in the bottom, right? And I'm going to do the other side. And then I'm going to baste it. And this is a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to baste it first, take the pins out, make sure that I'm happy with it, and then I'll go back and stitch it at 3/8 of an inch. So that's what we've done here. So now and you want to sew it so the gathering is towards the feed dogs. The feed dogs will help move that through a little bit. So now I'm going to turn inside right. And this is where I thought the elastic went. And I suppose you could put elastic in here, but I'm happy to say that there isn't elastic in here. It's just a gathered sleeve. So it will like hang loosely. It's a 3/4 sleeve. This is the one we're doing. We're doing this sleeve A. And now we've got this folded edge that's down here, and we're going to use that to cover the raw edge of our sleeve where we just sewed. So we're going to go back. Now, the directions tell you to stitch it with the machine. And if you are an amazing seamstress, you can stitch that from the right side here and catch the back side in without making it lumpy. Me, I do it by hand. So I'm going to fold this all in and enclose that entire band. And as in doing so, make sure that my band is the same width on the outside all the way around. Right? We don't want this band to be this big here and then this big somewhere else. It will look homemade. And then we can take out this basting stitch, right? If we've done one inside the seam allowance and one outside the seam allowance, we only have to take out one. But any of these that you can see, you need to take out. So then we will have this really nice sleeve band, and I'm just pinning this very quickly, you can see, just so we can look at it and get an idea. But we have this really nice sleeve band, right? That's kind of, I mean, this dress is very boho. It's very gathered and loosey and all of that. So that is the sleeve. So I'm going to finish up the base of both of my sleeves, and then I suspect we're going to insert the sleeve. But let's check. Yes. So the next step will be to sew in the sleeve. There is elastic casing on It's on this sleeve, which we're not doing, and it's also on this sleeve. So that's great. We don't have the elastic casing. We don't have to deal with it. I like it. All right, I'm going to go finish up the arm edge of my sleeve, and then we'll be back to put the sleeves into our top. So we finished the sleeve, and look at how much neater that is, right? Instead of having all of those strings everywhere, I did stitch this by hand. You can stitch it with the machine, but you have to stitch it here in the ditch so you don't see it, and capture this hem in the back, which is a challenge, honestly. So I prefer to take the few minutes and hand stitch it. I mean, the goal is either to make a fast dress or to make a beautiful dress. So I opt for the beautiful dress. And you can see that the band is even all the way around. I have this great little ruler, and I just run it all the way around before I stitch it to make sure that it's all the same. So the bottom of the sleeve is done, and then we turn our attention to putting the set-in sleeve in. Now we've marked, whether I use pins, but whether you've used a marking tape or whatever, there's a center dot at the top of the sleeve. That matches up with the shoulder seam. And then critically, we want to make sure that the double notch goes towards the back of the garment, and that way we know that this sleeve is going on the correct way. And since we've basted the lining and the fashion fabric together, or if you didn't line it and you use the facing, then you would just have one layer of fabric here. It's actually working like one piece of fabric. So I lay them right side up the way they're going to look. This is the front, the sleeve, everything is right side out, and I match this pin up to this shoulder seam. And I want to pin it so the sleeve is going to be down to the feed dogs. So I'm going to turn these to match them together, but I'm going to pin them from the inside of my garment. So here's my shoulder seam, and here is that pin, and we're going right sides together. I'm going to pin that in place. So that's my first mark. My second mark is the underarm seam, and again I want to have a really nice seam. I'm going to line these up really well and pin them. Now underneath the garment, underneath the arm, right, we don't need any ease there, so I'm going to pin those. That's a 1-to-1 just up to where the notches are, or up to where we have started our gathering stitches. So I'm going to go to one side and then to the other, lining up the raw edges. This sleeve has got a pretty good cap on it, so you have to be careful not to catch the sleeve underneath. The slope of it is pretty severe. All right, so now I have my shoulder seam pinned and the underarm section pinned, and what I'm left with are two sections where the sleeve is actually a little bit larger than the armhole. So we have a concave and a convex seam. And these are fit-in sleeves, right? They're not puffy sleeves. They're not gathered sleeves. They're just fit-in. So we're just using this gathering stitch to ease the sleeve in, so we don't need a lot of gathering. So I'm going to take my two basting threads and I'm just going to tug on them ever so slightly to get a little bit of gathering going on. I don't need a lot, just a little, till they fit, right? And then I'm going to finger these to match the raw edges and make sure that I don't have any pleats down below or any gathers. I don't want any gathers. I just want it to be eased in a little bit, which is one of the reasons why we're putting the sleeve down to the feed dogs, because the feed dogs will help with that. It moves the fabric down below faster than the fabric up at the top. And see, I can feel that there's a pleat there, and I actually just pinned in part of the sleeve. So you have to be really careful with these sleeves that you don't pin in part of the sleeve cap, because it is kind of a severe sleeve. So once you've gone all the way around, so I'm going to pin this side and make sure that I don't have any gathers and that it's just all eased in there. And then I'm going to pin around the other side, and I'm going to baste it. And I like to baste it first because it's very easy with this type of sleeve to make a boo-boo. And if you baste it, you can baste over the pins, which is helpful. And then you can take the pins out and look at it. And if you need to fix something, you only have to rip out a little section, and then you can fix it with a basting stitch and go back and look and make sure it's good. So once it's good, so when I sew it, when I baste it, I sew it this way. Once it's good, I turn it over and sew it this way so I can see what I'm sewing, and I just sew over the basting stitch. Same thing if I'm going to serge it. I want to serge it this way because I don't want this part of the sleeve to get caught inside there. That would be sad if it was the serger. So this sleeve is in, and you can see how lovely it looks. It fits in really well. I basted it, I pinned it, I basted it, and then I went and stitched it. I had one little blip I had to fix, and then I went back and serged it, and the sleeve looks gorgeous. So you press it, and you press the seam allowances towards the sleeve cap, and you have this really cute little puffy boho style sleeve, and it's all good. So that's great. So I'm going to finish my other sleeve and get that done. And the next step is to start on the skirt. We are going to start constructing our skirt now. So this skirt has 3 layers. There's an upper layer. We're doing version C. So there's this upper layer, there's a middle layer, and a lower layer. So we're going to start with this layer right now. So this is piece 15, and we have 1, and it's cut on the fold. So we go this way. This is the center front. And then we have piece 16, which goes around the back, and this gets attached to the front piece this way, so we make this great big circle. And guess what? It's going to be gathered. So surprise, surprise. So here we go. We're going to sew these side seams together. That's our first task. Let's just sew these right sides together. All right, so we're going to go take that to the machine, and then we'll come back, and I believe we do pockets next. All right, we stitched our upper tier together and we have this huge, enormous circle. All right, so we're going to set that aside and now we're going to do pockets. So that's piece 17. We have 2 pieces of piece 17 cut on the fold. So this is the middle tier and we have our pockets. And we're going to match up the dots on the pattern to the dots on the pocket. So you have these dots on the pocket and then there are dots on the tissue. And what we're going to do is we're going to take each piece separately and open it up. Right side facing up. And we're going to match a pocket, the right side of the pocket, to the right side of the tier. And the reason you want to mark those dots on the pattern is because you want all the pockets to line up, because eventually we're going to be sewing this pocket to that pocket to that pocket. So we've done one side, we're going to do the other side, same thing, right sides together. So you should have 4 of these little pockets, right sides together, matching them up. And we're going to stitch this pocket on. So we're just stitching the pocket to the tier. And we're going to do that for the other tier piece also. All right, and then we'll be back to discuss how we stitch these pockets up together. All right, we sewed on our pocket. We sewed on all 4 pockets, actually. So here's the pocket, you can see. And if you are finishing your edges, overlocking them or serging them, now's a good time for this tier to do it instead of doing them together, because really to get the pocket to lie flat, you have to press these seams open. You have to clip them and press them open. So we have sewn this on, and I have pressed it flat the way I stitched it, and then I have pressed it away from the center tier fabric. And then what I'm going to do is essentially understitch all of them, which is to put a line of stitching on the pocket side holding the seam allowance to the pocket. So I've stitched the seam allowance to the pocket. That helps keep the pocket from flipping out. And then we're going to sew these 2 tiers together. So I have this one tier with my top stitching all done, and I have my second tier with my top stitching all done. And I'm going to match up the edges down here. I'm just going to turn this so I can pin it a little better, since I am left-handed. All right, so I'm going to match up the bottom edges of the tier and put a pin in. I'm going to come up to where that dot is, and I want to try to line these pockets up as best as possible. I mean, we cut all these pieces together, so they should line up perfectly. And I like to put 2 pins, where I need to start and stop. It's a little visual reminder for me to start and stop. And then I want to make sure I line these pockets up, these seams up pretty well so they'll look good from the outside. And again, I'm going to stitch from the top of this tier to that large dot on the pocket. So I'm going to stop here. So I'm going to stitch from here to here, and I'm going to stitch from here to here. And I'm going to pin my pocket together, and I'm going to stitch the pocket bag itself all the way around. So that's pretty simple. We start stitching here. You can tack it off and back up and then stitch all the way around here. I usually come across and then go all the way down. But you need to leave this open because this is where your hand goes. So don't stitch this seam all the way down. Just stitch it here to here and here to here, right? You need to leave this open or else you'll have no place to put your hand in your pocket. And I have seen that done before. It's pretty funny until you have to rip it out. Okay, so we're gonna go finish this tier and we will be moving forward. Alrighty, we have done the pockets. And after you sew them on, you want to put a snip in this seam allowance in the back side at the top and at the bottom. So you can press that seam allowance open and you can press the pocket to the front. Now, honestly, if they had drafted this pocket a little bit higher, you could put it into the seam allowance and then you would be golden. But we're going to press this to the front, and because we understitched that pocket, it lies beautifully flat and we can get our hand in there. Hopefully you can get your hand in there. Now, the next step is to start all the gathering. And you can see as you're working on this skirt why a lightweight fabric is really critical, because this skirt is enormous, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is find the center front and the center back. They're marked on the tissue, and you certainly, if you've marked your pattern, you can do that. But if you are like me and you don't mark many things, there's an easier way to do it. You pin the two side seams together, and then as you fold it, this is your center front. So I just put a little pin mark in there, and then my center back. And I have already gone ahead and done 2 rows of basting stitches on the top of this piece 17. There's my center back. And now I can unpin these side seams. And I stitched from pocket all the way around and then left my tails, and then stitched from pocket all the way around and left tails, because you don't want to be gathering threads all the way around this. Halfway, that's a lot of threads to be gathering anyway. Now we're going to take our pieces 15 and 17 that we put together, right? And this part, this pointy part, is going up towards the bodice. So this is the part we're going to sew the skirt to, this skirt that we just did. And again, we need to find the center front and the center back. Same principle. I'm going to pin the 2 side seams together and find the center front. Now when you're sewing these, make sure you sew the center front to the front of the skirt, because the pockets are facing front, right? So we want to think about that. And then this is the center back. Now when I do my gathers, they'll be fairly even. At least they'll be balanced by quadrants, which is perfectly fine. All right, so I have the right side of my front piece. And I'm going to lay that this way so you can see it. So this is the right side of my front piece, right? Here's the peak that goes into the bodice, and then the right side of my of my ginormous skirt, and I want to make sure that I am looking at the front. So this is the front, and you know, I've been sewing for a long time. I still lay my pieces out in front of me like this, right sides up, so I can look how the pieces are actually going to go together. Now, because I'm gathering this lower skirt, I'm going to put that on the bottom. And the first thing I'm going to do is flip my 2 center fronts and match them up. All right, match up the raw edges. And then I'm going to run along and I'm going to match up my side seams. There's a lot of fabric here. Match up my side seams. Because these seams, you're going to see these seams right from the side. I mean, you may see them depending on the fabric. This one that I have is very, very busy, so it's kind of it'll give me a little grace. And then I'm going to go around and match the center back pins that I put in. So this way I know I have my right sides facing my right sides and nothing is upside down. We hope. This would be a bugaboo to rip out. All right. And then the last side seam. So now my dress skirt portion is in quadrants. And I can start pulling the ease just by quadrants, right? So I can, since I've broken these up at the side seams, I can pull this one and then pull that one and pull the 2 in the front. So I'm going to grab 2 rows of stitches here. Let's see if I can find the threads. Okay, we have these threads. All right, so I'm going to grab 2 of the basting threads, and I'm going to get the skirt section, which is this big floppy section, to fit this section. So I'm just going to pull on the threads and run my fingers across and try to, make them as balanced as possible. I'm going to do that once I figure out how long this is going to be. That looks pretty good. It's pretty close. Now you can see my gathers are all in one place, so I want to kind of spread them out across this whole quadrant. A little more. Be careful you don't pull too far. You could very easily, if it's small, pull these right out from the other end. Yeah, it's not fun. Then you have to do it all over again. All right, so I'm happy with that, and I'm just going to pin it. And again, this is one of those things when you sew it, you probably want to baste it, because you can baste over the pins. Just go slow. And then take the pins out and take a look at it, make sure you're happy with it. Then you can go back and stitch it. I know there's a lot of work in this, but again, this is a look that we're going for, right? We're going for a boho look, and this is how we're going to get it. So I'm going to finish pinning this section. So you can see that I have pinned my gathers to one section, and I'm going to go around and do the other 3 quadrants. After we've put this tier on, baste it and stitch it, and we're happy with it, we're going to do the same thing to tier 18, to piece 18, the bottom tier. We're going no pockets this time. We're going to sew the side seams together, do a double row of basting, find the centers, the quadrants, and attach it to the bottom of this. Before you attach it, you want to do a hem. They recommend a double fold baby hem on it. You could serge it and do a single fold. You do whatever is most comfortable for you. If you have a rolled hem foot and you're adept at using that, that's perfect. If not, you can use an edge foot and do a baby hem that way. There's lots of options, but it's a stitched hem because it's so gathered you won't see it, and it might take you like a year to hand stitch around this hem. So we're going to finish this piece and finish piece 18, which is the bottom tier, and then when we come back, we'll be putting this skirt to the top. All right, we have come a long, long way. We have this bundle of skirt, which looks adorable. So a couple of things. I have added my lower tier on. I used a remnant that I had in my stash, so I didn't have enough to make 3 cuts on the fold for piece 18. So my piece 18 and my piece 17 are the same. There's no ruffle there, which is fine because I'm short and I don't need the extra volume anyway, but you'll have 3 panels going around here, so there'll be a ruffle there on this 3rd tier. Mine is straight. Also, I just did a turned edge. I serged the bottom hem and turned it because I liked that hem. You can do that, or you can do a little double fold, a little tiny double fold hem. If that works for you, that's fine. So now I have this huge section of skirt, and I need to attach it to my top. So I know where my center front is on my top and also on my attachment, but I need to find the center back so I can make sure that it's all gathered evenly across the piece. And I've done 2 rows of gathering stitches on this upper tier, and break them here at the point at the top also, in addition to breaking them at the sides. So really, once we sew this together here, we're done. Our top is finished. Now, it is super low, and when I come back after I've put this all together, we will discuss how you want to some options on covering up this super deep V that we have going on here. So I'm going to put this little guy together just like we did all the other gathers, you know, pin it, gather it, baste it, stitch it, and away we go. And then we'll talk about this this super low V-neck here, this super low V-neck here that we have. All right. Cute, right? I love this floral. Florals for summer are everywhere, and I am definitely into it. So this, you can see how low this comes. It comes way down below where I want it to be. So I added just this little piece of leftover lace I had from a slip that I made. But you could take your fashion fabric and just cut a triangle. This one's too big, but you could cut it in and sew it on the inside. So essentially, I just tacked this to the lining all the way down on the inside. And it actually gives me just enough coverage that I feel comfortable wearing this and not like it's going to be overwhelming. How's that? Let's put it that way. But yeah, I love this dress. It makes me feel young. It is young. It's very boho. It's a throwback to, you know, when I was in high school in the 70s, and that kind of, it gives me that kind of vibe, and it makes me feel fun and young. And yes, I am ready. I'm taking this on a cruise with me, and I am going to enjoy wearing it. So I hope you enjoyed this sew along with Simplicity 9702, the boho dress. And please subscribe to our channel. We would love to have you. Give us a thumbs up and follow us along. So we will talk to you soon. Happy sewing. Bye.